I do not think that it is efficacious to alienate your political allies. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, like, I could be wrong. Maybe it's a good thing. I mean, surely it's been working out so far, right? We totally have, like, a lot of guys who feel comfortable speaking about abortion. Do we have those? Do we have a lot of those? No? Oh. I wonder why. Fellow feminists, hello. We need to talk. So, today I'm celebrating a little bit of an anniversary. It's exactly 10 years ago today that I had my abortion. I was only 19 years old, and I was pre-transition, so that made things a little bit easier on me at the time. I like to tell people that Planned Parenthood saved my life 2 times. First time when I needed an abortion, and second time when I started testosterone through their informed consent program. So Planned Parenthood gave me my voice, literally and figuratively, and I've been trying to use that voice as often as I am able to advocate for reproductive autonomy. I'm a proud and out abortion haver and baby eater. Tastes like chicken. And so for anybody who's still behind somehow, trans men are men, cis men are the same gender as trans men, trans women and cis women are the same gender, trans men are not men light, not diet man, and we're not women. Trans men are men, trans men are men. You get it? You got it? Okay? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page before we get started. And I understand that my presentation is the thing that you're looking at right now. And so if you have any questions, you know how cis men can be femboys? They can be men who like women's clothes sometimes, but they're still men. Yeah, that's me. That's what I'm doing. Okay, look. You can be a man with a vagina and paint your nails. You can do that. That is a thing you can do. You can do anything you want. It's kind of cool, actually. So at this point, you're probably thinking, like, what is this video going to be about? And you're probably predicting, the vagina boy is mad because we're using the wrong words. And, you know, that's actually part of it, but it's far from the full picture. What I'm here to tell y'all today is that your advocacy is bad and you should feel bad. And if you want to be like a more effective advocate for abortion, I'm going to need you to sit down, shut up for a minute, and just let me mansplain that to you. This is the cis women I'm addressing today, because frankly, it's y'all who y'all are messing up. Y'all are not doing feminism well at all. In order for y'all to understand this video, let me tell you a little bit of something about myself, which is that in a month from now, actually less than a month from now, I'm getting a hysterectomy, which I'm really excited about. I've never wanted biological kids, and not having the physical ability to get pregnant is going to be a huge relief for me. That shit would cause a lot of dysphoria. And I live in Missouri. Bad place to live if you need reproductive care access. But despite this being something that I really want, I noticed a touch of hesitancy. And that's not an uncommon thing for me. Frankly, I'm a very indecisive person. But when it comes to like a major surgery that's going to be permanent and irreversible, if you got a little bit of hesitancy, you want to like investigate that and figure out what that feeling is about. After some thorough introspection, I found the root of that hesitancy. My identity as a pro-choice advocate, my identity as an individual who could get pregnant, and my identity as a person whose voice mattered in the conversation clashed with the second-wave feminist men versus women rhetoric that permeates abortion advocacy. So then the question is, where would I get an idea like that? How or why would I internalize the idea that my voice and my advocacy would be less welcome and less important if I got a hysterectomy? Why would I have that very silly idea? Okay, can I just say that usually the right can't meme. That is true. But they fucking got you guys with this one. They are clowning on you, okay? April 2022. Pregnant man emoji, and y'all libs are patting yourselves on the back. We are such good allies. We love the trans people. May 2022. No uterus, no opinion. Where is the lie, though? And the really sad part is that the conservatives didn't have to be clever or creative to point this out. You guys just gave it to them. You just gave this to them. Gotta love cis allies. So here's the problem, right? Y'all call yourselves trans allies. You consider yourself progressive and feminist, but then you also turn around and call something that affects me, my body, my life. You turn around and you call that a women's issue. You say, no uterus, no opinion. I'm a guy and I can get pregnant. I'm on birth control. My girlfriend could get me pregnant, and if she did, it would be an issue for her too, regardless of her anatomy or her gender. What I'm trying to say is that reproductive rights are for everyone, regardless of what body parts they have or what gender they identify as. And unfortunately, this is absolutely not reflected in the rhetoric that people commonly use when they're advocating for abortion. And I think it's a really big problem for several reasons. I was made to be unsure about my decision to get a hysterectomy because y'all motherfuckers are out here saying over and over that if you do not have a uterus, then your opinion doesn't matter. How many cis women do y'all think that have decided against getting a hysterectomy or delayed getting a hysterectomy that they wanted because they heard y'all say shit like that? You know, maybe you guys don't care very much about trans people, and that's fine, but you do talk a whole lot about how much you care about women, and considering how much you care, I just thought it might be intuitive, it might be understandable to you that telling women, cis women, that their voice matters less if they cannot conceive, that concept is misogynistic. To have this expectation on that you are putting on women's bodies, you are pushing cis women out of the abortion advocacy space if they have had a hysterectomy or if they can't get pregnant for whatever reason. Y'all are misogynists and biological essentialists. Your ideology and your advocacy is stupid as fuck. That's all I can say. I really don't know what to say except it's a little bit stupid. And it should go without saying that with this rhetoric, you are also pushing trans women out of the advocacy space. You are making them feel as though they are not allowed to speak, which I don't think is a good thing. I don't know why some people seem to think it's a good thing, with the exception of TERFs. I understand that TERFs just hate people that they perceive to be men, which includes trans women, which is transphobic. With the same rhetoric, by the same logic, you are also pushing out trans women with this language because trans women's bodies don't meet your expectations. Basically, what I hear when you guys say no uterus, no opinion is no broodmare potential, no opinion. And I don't know why you think that is a progressive thing to say. I don't know why you think that. And I do want to talk about the language, because frankly, the language y'all use is despicable. You call pregnant people who don't want to give birth mothers. Why are y'all saying that shit? Like, trans people aside, you're going to use the umbrella term pregnant mother to include 12-year-olds who need abortions after getting raped by their dads. That's the words you want to use? You could alternatively and simply use inclusive language. I actually used inclusive language in that last paragraph without effort. It's pretty easy. You can just say pregnant people. Did you know that women are people? I think women are people and are therefore included in the category people. But the word people also includes people who are not women. So it's like a win-win situation. It's really not hard. It's not. Not all women can get pregnant, but all women are people. And there are people who are not women who can get pregnant. Therefore, the category woman or mother is not only kind of fucked up because it can be a little bit transphobic, including, putting people into the wrong category. And the word mother, people who don't want to be mothers are not mothers. And I don't think that you should call them that. Also a little bit fucked up, calling children who are victims of incest or rape, calling them mothers and women. when they're just kids, it's a little bit fucked up in my opinion. And you can just say people who can get pregnant, because then you're talking about the exact group of people that you're actually talking about. People who can get pregnant. People who need access to abortion. It's actually not very hard to say. You know, actually, one of my main problems with the no uterus, no opinion shit, it's not only transphobic, misogynistic by putting expectations on people's bodies and miscategorizing people and kind of just problematic, but one of the reasons why I really don't like it is just because it's kind of a stupid argument. It doesn't add anything to the conversation. It's kind of a distraction from who our actual political enemy is. You know, there's nothing about having a uterus that makes somebody more likely to be correct about abortion issues, surprisingly. As far as I know, Amy Coney Barrett is a cis woman. She might have, I don't know if she's had a hysterectomy or not. I don't know if she still has a uterus, but I don't know if she ever had a uterus to begin with. But the thing is that she's a woman, probably has a uterus, and she is, or you should perceive her as, your political enemy. You should be pointing your finger at people like her, not people like me. So unfortunately, what I'm seeing a whole lot of is a lot of, especially cis women, seeming to totally believe that your stance on abortion is predetermined on the basis of your anatomy, your sex characteristics, your ability to get pregnant, I guess, or your gender identity, or perhaps like how you were raised, what kind of like gendered socialization they imagine you went through, or a combination of these things in whatever way is the most convenient to their belief system. It's gross, it's bad, and I don't like it. And so what I'm trying to beat into your goddamn skull today is that my voice does not become less important or less valid or less correct when I enact my reproductive autonomy. It doesn't change on the basis of my sex characteristics, and it doesn't change on the basis of my gender identity. Reproductive status does not predict virtue. You know, claiming that men as either a gender or a biological set of characteristics attached to a group of people, it doesn't help us identify who our political enemy is. It distracts us from who our political enemy is. I'm going to put some numbers on the screen here, and what you're going to see, this is a Gallup poll splitting up the demographics of people who are pro-choice and anti-choice. And what you're going to see here is that there is a fairly significant difference between men and women here, and frankly, I don't love to see it. I'd like to see men do better. Of course, always. Like, let's close that gap. But let's see where the significant difference is based on demographic. You will perhaps be surprised to learn that it is not gender that tends to predict whether or not somebody will be pro-choice or anti-choice, but it is actually political affiliation, as well as religiosity. By the way, I want to add in that it is absolutely, in my opinion, that tolerance toward Christians is a stupid idea. It's just a stupid idea. Christians are very often pieces of shit who believe terrible things and want to make your life worse, especially if you're a queer person or a person who can get pregnant. So actually, fuck religious tolerance. Hate Christians. Hate them. I hate them. What's stopping you? I don't know. I was raised Catholic. I hate those fuckers. If you are obsessed with idpol, if you just get really attached to the demographics of people instead of their political affiliations, which is, you know, what you should be paying attention to, then I've got just the prescription for you. It's bully Christians. Fuck them up. I mean, like, look at this right here on the screen. Weekly religious service attendance, 26% pro-choice, 71% pro-life. Where the gender men, it's basically 50-50, 48% pro-choice, 47% pro-life. Again, I'd love to see higher numbers, but the fact is that there's only 48% men and 61% of women are pro-choice. Those numbers are nowhere near as significant as the conservatives. 28% pro-choice, 67% pro-life. And again, the goddamn religious people, they're nasty. And you should be mean to them. If the Supreme Court had been entirely comprised of girl boss, Catholic women with uteruses, we would have seen a 9-0 vote. It would have been worse for us, not better. Inversely, I'm almost positive that we'd have a 9-0 vote in the opposite direction if the Supreme Court had been comprised of trans women. Women who have never had uteruses nor the ability to get pregnant. Or probably also see the same 9-0 with trans men or any fucking group of non-binary people. Do you know why? It's because, as we looked at these demographics earlier, this is not a gender war. Neither the reproductive organs that you have nor the gender that you identify as, neither of these things accurately predict whether or not you are going to be pro-choice. The most accurate predictor is your politics and your religiosity. As I said earlier, trans people are often not very religious and are often very left-leaning. And it's really absurd to me that y'all are feigning ignorance of our enemy's actual demographics. You are scapegoating the bad gender or the bad sex, depending on which one feels more woke to you at the time. You are taking away from this conversation by pointing your finger in the wrong direction. It's the conservatives and the religious folks who are our enemies, not men. So I got a question for you guys, and I want you to put the answer in the comments. Which body part do you think having helps you be more correct about abortion issues? Personally, my answer would be the brain. Something that really confuses me is, do y'all actually believe this shit? Like, do you all actually believe that somebody who can accidentally get someone else pregnant would inherently or like disproportionately like oppose reproductive rights on the basis of their genitals? Or do you think perhaps that actually everyone has a stake in this? Apologies if this is a little bit morbid, a little bit too real for some of you guys. My rapist wanted me to have an abortion because he was already paying child support. He didn't want to pay more child support. A lot of you seem to have like this cartoon villain idea in your head of what every man is like. And I want to know if men want to rape people and get them pregnant all the time, 100% of the time, because of what genitals they are born with, what hormones are in their body, or because of what they identify as, or because of the way that they were raised. Which one is it? Is it a combination of all of them? I just don't know how you think that it is not transphobic, not gender essentialist to believe this shit. You know, if it's the chromosomes that give you the urge to rape, if it's the Y chromosome, then you are saying that trans women are rapists. If it is the penis, being born with a penis that makes you need to rape, then again, you are calling trans women men and you are calling them predators. If it's the testosterone, you are calling both trans women and trans men and non-binary people, a lot of fucking genders, you are calling them predators. And if you don't already understand it by now, I actually am at a loss. I do not know how to explain to you that kind of thinking is not progressive. It's turfy. It's dumb as fuck. And my rapist, my ex, is actually the most evil person I have ever encountered, and he pales in comparison to these caricatures that you guys make of men. I just don't know how or why you do it. I get it. Trauma. I get it. I have it too. My girlfriend's dad, however, justifies his racism because he was mugged by some black people. So, I don't know, if we're going to be consistent here, right? If you're allowed to hate men and call them predators and shit on the basis of their gender identity or on the basis of their bodies, then you should also admit then that it is okay for people to be racist if they have been traumatized by a black person. You know, like you've been traumatized by a man, you got assaulted or whatever by a dude. I'm just asking for consistency here. Personally, I'm of the belief that all bigotry is bad. But that's just me, though. There are a lot of bad dudes out there. I'm not gonna fucking deny that. But the cartoon villain that y'all seem to imagine every time you bring up men it's getting a little bit too silly for me. I'm sorry. Like I said, my rapist wanted me to have an abortion. He was a Nazi also. I just don't think that you're talking about real people. I see this meme going around. I see this post going around a lot lately, and it's something like, because of this Roe decision, it basically means that male rapists are legally allowed to choose the mother of their children. And I'm like, man, who are you talking about? If the average man that you know in your life is like this, why are you talking to him? Why are you talking to these guys? Why are they in your life? There are some bad people out there, and gender does not predict whether or not you're gonna be a good person. I'm sorry to say that to y'all females out there. I'm just a little bit frustrated because y'all call yourselves trans allies, and then the second it gets easier to pretend trans people don't exist, you do it. I can still get pregnant even when it's inconvenient for you. I'm still a man even when it's inconvenient for you. The most bizarre thing is how often I'm seeing y'all like shouting, "Men, do something, speak up. We need your voices." But then in the same breath, you say men can't have an opinion on abortion. This is a little bit of mixed messaging, yeah? And I think that I could probably agree with some of y'all. Something like, if me being angry and venting, or whatever the fuck you want to call it, if me doing that chases men out of the abortion advocacy space, then maybe they aren't real feminists. But the thing is like, oh man, you can only get away with abusing people so much before they decide, you know what, actually I don't want to deal with it anymore. I don't want to get misgendered anymore. I don't want to be told that on the basis of my anatomy, my voice is less valid and should be silenced, despite me having the correct opinion. You can only abuse your political allies so much before they go, you know what, actually, I don't want to be a part of this space. Actually, I don't want to be involved because y'all are assholes. Personally, I do not think that it is efficacious to alienate your political allies. That's just my opinion, though. I mean, like, I could be wrong. Maybe it's a good thing. I mean, surely it's been working out so far, right? We totally have, like, a lot of guys who feel comfortable speaking about abortion. Do we have those? Do we have a lot of those? No? Oh. I wonder why. And I hear y'all yelling at your screen right now. You're trying to point out something like, it's experience. It's the experience rather than the biology that makes AFAB people more likely to have the correct stance on abortion because they are able to get pregnant. There's a possibility that they have had an accidental pregnancy before. And you know what? I actually agree to an extent. I do acknowledge that being part of a certain demographic and having a body that can, like, do certain things will definitely affect your political stance. We already looked at the demographics, though, and we know that there's not a super significant difference between the genders on the abortion issue. So it's already irrelevant. The point is already irrelevant. But on top of your point already being invalid, There's a reason why I don't tell cis people to be quiet on trans issues and urge all cis people to listen to trans people. For one, I want more allies. I want more cis people to speak up for me whenever I'm not around to defend myself. And two, I'd rather y'all listen to the cis man Vosh over the trans people Buck Angel and Blair White. The reason for that being, Vosh's stance on trans issues is correct and reasonable and good, and I would like his voice to be boosted. I certainly wouldn't want to boost the voices of Buck Angel and Blair White simply on the basis of them being trans. No, they're wrong, and I want them to shut the fuck up. If you are my political ally, I want your voice to be boosted. I want as many as my political allies to be as loud as they possibly can. And I would like my political enemies, TERFs, Blair White, Buck Angel, people who hate trans people are sometimes trans people. People who hate women are sometimes women. I want those fuckers to sit down and shut the fuck up. I would like them to use the special new chapstick made just for my political enemies. So, again, whose voice do you want to boost? Mine? A man's who won't have a uterus anymore in a few weeks? Or Amy Coney Barrett's, a woman who might have the ability to get pregnant? Which one do you want to be quiet? By the way, I just wanted to point out that I'm wearing this shirt to make fun of you because you're an idpol obsessed liberal. And I think it's kind of funny. I think it's kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I'm very funny. Brunch lib. You're a brunch lib. I'm a better feminist than you. So here's a funny thing that I hear y'all say sometimes, which is something like, telling people to use inclusive language is a distraction and takes away from the cause. First of all, as previously stated, y'all are the ones who are distracting folks by doing the men are the enemy idpol shit and pointing your fingers away from our political enemies and to a demographic. Just because. Secondly, IDK bro, but I use inclusive language pretty effortlessly, and I wouldn't have to bring it up. I wouldn't have to bring it up and fight with you about it if you would just use it. You realize it doesn't have to be a big discourse thing. You could just start using the inclusive language, and nobody would have to talk about it anymore. You are the problem. It wouldn't be distracting if you would shut up and use inclusive language. As previously stated, women are people, and therefore I don't think it would be very hard to call them people. Sometimes I think y'all don't think that women are people. Sometimes I really think that. Y'all getting mad when I ask you to stop being transphobic reminds me of the extensive history of worker solidarity failing because white workers didn't want their efforts to benefit their black co-workers. That's what y'all are doing right now. The white workers would have benefited from including POC in their advocacy, but they didn't because they were racist, and they just wanted to be racist. And it is the opinion of this writer that cis women would benefit from including everyone in their advocacy, regardless of gender, but y'all are brain-dead bigots who want to shit on people who aren't like you, instead of getting anything done. That's who you are. Being a person who had an abortion, you don't have to explain to me that being the person who has to carry the thing in your body is extremely dangerous, can be very painful and very uncomfortable. And to tell you a little bit about my experience having an abortion 10 years ago, I had really bad morning sickness. I was working at Subway and I was puking constantly. So my manager illegally cut my hours down to 3 hours a week. I was actually living with a guy who didn't have a job, and I was 19 years old, and I didn't have any support from my parents. I was actually starving, and I didn't have access to medical care. I couldn't afford co-pays and bills. And it was really scary. And so Like, something that I want to make really clear is that no shit, of course, the person who has to carry it like a fucking parasite, that person is more physically affected by this situation than the person who doesn't have to carry it physically. But there are other ethics that are important to the abortion conversation. At least I would hope that we could agree with that. The other ethics here that I did not make explicitly clear in the original recording is ethics when it comes to using somebody else's genetic material without their consent to bring something to term and create another human without consent. So something that you may not be aware of, especially if you're not a trans person, is that there is a possibility that reproductive tissues, gonads, can be transplanted. That's the thing that can happen. It has not happened very many times, as in for penises, for penile transplants. That's happened like 5 times ever, as far as I am aware of, that I remember reading about. It's not very common, still sort of like experimental. In these rare instances, whenever reproductive organ is transplanted, the gonads, the genetic material, is not given to the person who is having the transplant, because most people would intuitively agree that it would be unethical to use someone else's genetic material to make babies. You know, like, you got your dick blown off in the war, and then some kindly dead gentleman gives you his pee-pee and nuts after he dies. Do you think that you should be allowed to make babies with that? Most people say no. And the reason for that, from my understanding, is that using somebody else's genetic material to bring something to term without their consent is generally gonna be considered unethical. You know, if somebody, like, took a little scrape of my skin cells while I was sleeping or something, and then they, like, made a little clone of me, and I didn't say they could do that, I'd probably be a little upset. Actually, stealing somebody else's jizz and making a baby with it probably is a thing that is wrong. I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Of course, this is complicated by the way that humans reproduce, by the fact that somebody has to carry that shit in their body. And of course, if somebody is uncomfortable carrying something in their body, then they can get it the fuck out. That's what I think. I think people with parasites should be allowed to get rid of them if they don't want them. Personally, I feel that the most ethical option would be so that any person, regardless of what type of genetic material they make and which type of gender they might be, that anybody involved in the process can walk away. I mean, of course, you can't make a medical decision for a person who's carrying a parasite, but if you don't want to have anything to do with the parasite, I don't think you should have to. I really don't think that you should. Are women typically economically disadvantaged compared with men? If we're doing like the, we're talking cis people here? Yeah, that is absolutely the case. But does that mean that you should be able to force someone to be involved with the child that you decided to make? No. This shit would be so much easier if we just laid eggs. At least, like, part of the discussion would be a little bit less complicated. And again, I'm asking for consistency here because I am absolutely on the same page when somebody says that consenting to sex is not consenting to a child. That is 100% the case. 100% agree with that. But I think that you should also apply that to people who produce sperm. That does not mean that the sperm donor should have decisions over your medical decisions. No, that's not what I'm saying. But if they fucking want to walk away, they should be able to do that. And frankly, I don't think it's very pro-choice to disagree with that stance. I'm seeing you guys share a lot of stuff like, haha, yeah, men should be forced to get the snippy so that they will know what it's like to lack reproductive autonomy. AMAB people already understand what it's like to lack reproductive autonomy, okay? They do not have nearly as many contraceptive options that AFAB people do, and they have no options if their partner ends up pregnant by accident. Their genetic material can be, and often is, brought to term without their consent. Y'all are just okay with it when it happens to people you perceive as men. The difference between me and you, a good feminist and a bad feminist, is that I believe that reproductive autonomy is for everybody, not just the people that you perceive as women. Fucking transphobe. And to be crystal fucking clear, I don't think a sperm donor's willingness or unwillingness to have their genetic material come to term should dictate a pregnant person's autonomy over their body. It's sad that I even have to say that, but y'all are very dumb and also very eager to deliberately misinterpret the people you disagree with. Side note, I live in America where medical care costs money. Also, vasectomies are invasive procedures and are not always reversible. And just like doctors tell younger cis women that they're too young to make the decision, cis men get turned away too. Just get a vasectomy, bro. I thought you guys liked reproductive autonomy. Something a little bit silly I've noticed about people who have absorbed a lot of radfem rhetoric is that they kind of pretend that trans men have privileges that they don't have. Like, for example, I live in Missouri, first state to enact a trigger law banning abortion after Roe was overturned. And a funny thing about the language on the books in Missouri is that the laws ban abortion for women. Like, it actually uses the word women. And a lot of trans guys are actually legally men, legally male, like on all of their identifications. And so do you think that they'd make an exception for trans men to be able to legally access abortion in Missouri on the basis that their legal gender is male? No, probably definitely not. But it would be kind of hilarious to attempt to sue the state over it. And that really bothers me, that y'all imagine that trans men have like these special powers over cis women that we absolutely do not. We experience misogyny despite being men, and we belong in this conversation. By the way, I've unironically heard some people say that trans men have privilege that cis women don't have because we can get hysterectomies. To be honest, I'm pretty sure one of the reasons hysterectomies are more accessible to us than they are to cis women is because people want to sterilize us. They don't want us to reproduce. A lot of people think that we're fucking insane and they don't want us to have babies. Just putting that out there. That people want to genocide us because we're trans, and you're telling me that that's a privilege. Progressive. You are very progressive. And you know, something else that I hear y'all say that really bothers me is when you are asked to use inclusive language, when somebody tells you that it is important, instead of just changing your language, which is, again, pretty easy to do, you come up with the wildest excuses, like this one. It is okay to lump trans men in with women because that's what conservatives do. Conservatives consider trans men women, therefore it's okay. We're all talking about the same people. Do you think that I do not know that transphobic people consider me a woman? Do you think I don't know that? What I am asking is, do you think I'm a woman? If you do not think I am a woman, then you can simply use inclusive language. If you do think that I'm a woman, go ahead and keep lumping me in to that definition. I didn't ask. I already know that conservatives, transphobes, Venn diagram is a circle for those two. I already know that they consider me a woman. I didn't need you to tell me that. What I am asking is, do you, a self-proclaimed feminist and progressive, do you consider me a woman? Do you think that you should use language that lumps me into the category woman? I'm asking you not to do that. I'm not asking conservatives, our political enemies who are not progressives. I'm talking about you and the language you use. I think you can do better. Frankly, I think you can. I think that a lot of people don't understand why inclusive language is important, including trans men sometimes. Like, trans people in general sometimes don't understand the importance of this. And to me, one of the reasons why using inclusive language when it comes to medical stuff is because of how many trans people have died because of medical discrimination on the basis of them being trans. The example that I often bring up is Robert Eads. He's a trans man who in the early 2000s, actually it was the late 90s, he had ovarian cancer, which is very deadly. And he and his chosen family called so many places, so many surgeons and gynecologists asking, can you please take this guy and remove the cancerous body parts? Like, can you please help this guy? And so many places told him no on the basis that he was a trans man. They said things like it would be an embarrassment to the establishment. They said that it would bother women, like he would be intruding on women's spaces and shit like that. And so he died. He fucking died of ovarian cancer because he was a man who had body parts that were not expected or not normal. I'm actually going to insert a little clip here from the movie called Southern Comfort. It's a documentary following Robert Eads, the man who I just mentioned previously, who died from ovarian cancer, just during his final year living his life with his chosen family. And it felt like a really important watch to me. So if trans issues is something that you are interested in and like learning about, I absolutely recommend that you watch this movie. It is free on Tubi. I will try to put a link in the description.
It's Easter morning, and it's sunrise. And I wish I could understand why they did what they did, why they had to feel that way. And I know in a way they've contributed to my dying here. But I can't hate them. I don't hate them. I feel sorry for them. I can't say I actually forgive them for what they've done. I think that's more between them and God. But I don't hate them. I guess what makes me most sad is that they probably feel like they did the right thing.
And so one of the reasons why trans people and one of the reasons why medical institutions are now working very hard to use inclusive language and to educate their staff about trans people is so that this doesn't happen to people anymore. Like, that guy didn't have to die. He was like in his 40s or 50s. To give you an idea of how frequently trans people are discriminated against in the doctor's office, how often we are disparaged and just disrespected, honestly. Y'all like Pokemon, right? You watch Pokemon? Yeah, Pokemon. Okay. English voice actress of Meowth. That was a trans lady. She died in like her early 40s, I think, because she had a stomach virus and she didn't want to go to the doctor. Presumably because, like a lot of trans people can tell you, we get treated like shit a lot of the time at the doctor's office. Like, she had the fucking stomach flu and she stayed home and died. She would rather stay home and die than go to the fucking doctor's office, because you go to the doctor's office and they degrade you. They call you the wrong thing because of your body parts. Yeah. Whenever I was leaving my appointment for my hysterectomy consultation, the fucking lady at the front desk called me ma'am. Very cool of her to do that. She knew my name. She knew my name was a guy's name. That she called me ma'am. Way to make me feel fucking welcome and comfortable in this place that I'm going to get surgery. When you lump me in with the category woman, when you fail to use inclusive language, you are making it more likely that situations like these happen. I'm actually stuck between a rock and a hard place myself right now when it comes to my legal identifiers, because as much as I would want all of my documents to say male, some of my documents are attached to my medical insurance, and if I change that to male, there's a very real chance, this has happened to other trans people recently, that I will be denied gynecological care. My insurance will deny that because men don't need gynecological care. That's why this is really important to me, because I don't want to fucking die from lack of gynecological care, for example. I don't want to be denied access to care that I need on the basis of this binary system that you guys are constantly fucking enforcing with your everyday language. I want to be healthy and happy, just like you, and, you know, forgive me for saying this, for being so bold, but I think that despite being a dude with unexpected body parts, I think that I should have equal access to care. I really do think that. Very brave of me to say something like that, yeah. This is going to be a little bit contentious, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is that I think the abortion access issue affects trans masculine people disproportionately compared to cis women. Is it painful? Is it difficult, etc. for cis women? Yes. To have an abortion, yes, of course it is. There's a lot of stigma. It costs money. A lot of us are going to have to travel if we need access to abortion. But do you experience dysphoria? Do you have a brain that thinks it is not supposed to be able to get pregnant? Because I do have that brain. And whenever I went to go get my abortion when I was pregnant, when I was 19, and didn't realize I was trans and didn't know what dysphoria was or why it was affecting me the way that it did, it was very psychologically painful to feel for a second time that my body was betraying me, that it was doing something that it shouldn't be able to do, like it did during puberty. Not only that, but again, because of this expectation that people who present like women are the people who belong in these spaces where gynecological care happens, trans men feel alien. We are stared at. We can be berated just like somebody going into the wrong bathroom. I experience no delusions over how unwelcoming and how binary this world is. I've been fucking living in it for 29 years now. And it's very uncomfortable, it's very unwelcoming, and it's very difficult for trans people to survive. You know, I'm under no delusion that I'm gonna change the entire fucking world. I don't think I'm gonna abolish gender with this one video, but what I do think is a reasonable goal is that the trans allies that I know who fail to use inclusive language, the progressives that I know who do the same, I would really like it if y'all listened to this and got an understanding of how important this is and made an effort to change your language. I know it's not going to be perfect. Even I occasionally fail to use inclusive language. Wowza. But I just want you to try. I really would appreciate it if you tried. So I want to give you guys another example of how I think trans people are uniquely affected by this decision. And I also want to mention that I'm a white person, as you may have noticed. And so is this going to also more severely affect other minority groups, like people of color? Yes, of course, there's a shit ton of articles about that, but that isn't my specialty. You should definitely read about that shit. But this is what I'm good at. This is the stuff that I know that I want to teach y'all about. But I do want to make it clear that the abortion issue is not just a misogyny thing. It is also a racism thing. And so what I want to do now is show you an image, some art, I suppose you could call it, and I want you to interpret some political messaging from this image. All right, so here's what I think when I look at it, okay? Transgenderism is maiming our child broodmares and decreasing the white birth rate. Something like that. I know that probably sounds maybe a little bit crazy to people who aren't as informed about this stuff, but the Great Replacement theory bullshit is picking up a lot of steam lately over the last couple of years, and I do believe that conspiracy is entwined with the hatred of trans people.
On behalf of all the MAGA patriots in America, I want to thank you for the historic victory for life in the Supreme Court yesterday.
So in other words, conservatives aren't just restricting access to abortion because they hate the people that they perceive as women. They absolutely do, but that's not the only reason. They're doing this because they're racist and want more white babies. And they're doing this to maintain power over working class people via keeping us desperate. Hurting women and trans people a little more than cis men is just a happy little side effect. As mentioned previously, transmasculine people exist in this unique position where we experience misogyny despite not being women. And what I need you to understand is that our bodies are being legislated against more than cis women's are. Not less, not around the same, more. Cis women in the US are being incarcerated for miscarriages, convicted of manslaughter for having miscarriages, and testosterone, a life-saving medication for many transmasculine people, is classified as a teratogen, a medication that potentially causes birth defects or miscarriages. And so unfortunately, a lot of transmasculine people are reasonably afraid that this life-saving medication could be legislated out of our hands with the goal of saving babies. You know, it drastically increasing the suicide risk of developed adults to save babies. You know, I guess we're going to have to just wait and see what happens, especially since Roe has been overturned. But we're going to see. How many states do you think are just going to try to ban or limit the access of teratogenic medications, including and especially targeting testosterone, which they already want to take away from trans people? I live in Missouri. There were so many bills the last legislative session specifically targeting trans people, specifically trying to hurt trans people, and pretending that they're doing it so that they can help babies or children. This is something that's hurting my community, possibly more than it's going to potentially hurt cis women. And you guys are pushing us out of the conversation because fuck men. I don't want our political allies to feel alienated or to feel that they should be quiet on the basis that they do not have the body parts that you think they should have. I don't want pro-choice men to be quiet about abortion on the basis of their gender identity. I want them to be loud on the basis that they are correct. And if your goal is to secure reproductive care access, if your goal is to win this fight and not to play some petty little game, you should want that too. You should want more advocates, not less. No uterus, no opinion is irresponsible rhetoric. It is transphobic. It is misogynistic. It alienates pro-choice advocates whose bodies or identities don't fit with your mold. And most importantly, it points fingers in the wrong direction. It distracts from discourse. It adds nothing. So do me a little favor and check yourself before you call abortion a women's issue and before you call a theoretical pregnant person mother. And it's not that hard. You know, the numbers are clear. It's not a men thing. It's not a gender thing. that predicts whether or not somebody's going to be pro-choice. If a lot of the men that you keep around in your life are against reproductive autonomy, I'm sorry to tell you this, but that's kind of a you problem. You know, I haven't talked to my parents in over 2 years. I'm never going to speak to them again. Part of the reason, besides them being abusive, is they've got bad politics, okay? They vote for people who want me dead, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. I keep good company. I keep company of people who advocate for my well-being. Them's good people. But I see y'all online. I see you cis straight women online complaining about how it's somehow men's fault as a whole that your boyfriend is a pro-lifer. Keep better company. Pick better men. I don't know why you chose to date a conservative. I do not know why you give access of like your time, energy, and your body to people who don't want you to have rights. I don't know why you did that. But that is your fault. It is not my gender's fault. In closing, trans men are men, trans women are women, and non-binary people are exactly who they say they are. Being a cis woman never was a prerequisite for being an abortion advocate, and it never should be. So stop with the hostility and the microaggressions and the bigotry toward your political allies. We are stronger together. Shut the fuck up. Solidarity. Goodbye.